Hong Kong's budget gives tax breaks and highlights investments in AI. Billions to go from the exchange fund to support Northern Metropolis and other infrastructure projects. And Donald Trump focuses on the economy in the U.S. State of the Union speech. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Financial Secretary Paul Chan delivered the 2026 to 27 budget today, covering measures from new tax breaks to more support to the development of AI and the Northern Metropolis. We begin our coverage tonight first with some key takeaways. Unveiling his budget on the 9th day of the Chinese New Year, Financial Secretary Paul Chan brought good news with the city's consolidated account for the fiscal year, having turned from an estimated deficit of $67 billion to a surplus of $2.9 billion. That's mainly buoyed by a substantial increase in stamp duty and profits tax income. Fiscal reserves have rebounded to $650 billion. For the first time in some 40 years, Hong Kong will transfer income from the exchange fund, which is used to ensure stability of Hong Kong dollar's exchange rate, to the Capital Works Reserve Fund. The ceiling for salaries tax and profits tax concessions will be doubled to $3,000. The basic, child, and dependent parent allowances will also be raised. Apart from investing in the Northern Metropolis, the budget also spotlights InnoTech development with the establishment of the Committee on AI Plus and Industry Development Strategy. The one-for-one replacement scheme for private electric vehicles, in place for nearly 8 years, will come to an end. On property market-related measures, the only major adjustment targets luxury homes priced above $100 million. Their stamp duty will be raised to 6.5%. The government's operating account has recorded a surplus of more than $50 billion this financial year, driven by higher-than-expected revenue from stamp duty and profits tax. With that, this year's budget introduces more relief measures than last year. They include doubling the cap on salaries tax concessions. In last year's budget, the government forecast a consolidated deficit of $67 billion for the current financial year. However, the outcome marked a sharp turnaround to lock a $2.9 billion consolidated surplus. Financial Secretary Paul Chan says improved economic and capital market performance over the past year boosted tax revenue. Stamp duty income from stock transactions rose to nearly $100 billion, about 47% higher than budgeted. Profits tax revenue exceeded $200 billion, about 8% above estimates. Together, the two tax streams generated nearly $50 billion more than expected. But land sales revenue remained weak at $17.5 billion, and infrastructure spending, including projects in the Northern Metropolis, led to a deficit in the non-operating account. Financial Secretary Paul Chan says the government's financial position has improved markedly as the administration follows the principle of keeping expenditure within the limits of revenue in the economic cycle, which ensures the sustainability of public finances. Meanwhile, Chan plans to allocate $150 billion from the Exchange Fund over 2 years to the Capital Works Reserve Fund to support development of the Northern Metropolis and other projects. When asked about such use of the exchange fund, which primarily serves to regulate the exchange value of the Hong Kong dollar, the finance chief says it has consulted the Hong Kong Monetary Authority.
The main purpose of exchange fund is to defend Hong Kong's financial stability. Considering that we are just taking half of their income earned last year back to the government, also for investment purposes, we do think this is a considered prudent move.
A consolidated surplus of $22.1 billion is projected for next year. With the consolidated account returning to surplus this year, more sweeteners could be seen. The 100% tax concession for salaries tax and tax under personal assessment will have a ceiling raised from $1,500 to $3,000. About 2.12 million taxpayers are expected to benefit. The profits tax concession ceiling will be increased to $3,000, benefiting about 170,000 businesses. In the first 2 quarters of the next financial year, rates will be waived subject to a ceiling of $500 for each rateable property. Recipients of Comprehensive Social Security Assistance or CSSA, old age allowance, and similar subsidies will receive an extra allowance equal to 1 month of the standard rate. Some citizens welcomed the move, saying the extra money would allow them to enjoy small treats such as dining out, thereby supporting the local economy. There is more good news for taxpayers. Starting the next financial year, the basic allowance and single-parent allowance will increase from $132,000 to $145,000. The married person's allowance will rise to $290,000. More than 2 million taxpayers will benefit. Child allowances and additional child allowances will increase to $140,000, benefiting 360,000 taxpayers. Allowances for supporting a dependent parent or grandparent will rise by 10%. For those with dependent parents aged between 55 and under 60, the allowance will increase to $27,500. For those with dependents aged 60 or above, it will rise to $55,000. For parents residing in eligible residential care homes, the maximum deduction for elderly residential care expenses will increase to $110,000. A raft of measures are proposed to accelerate the development of the northern metropolis. They include increasing the bond issuance ceiling from the current $700 billion to $900 billion. The government is pressing ahead with the advancement of the northern metropolis, which will provide ample room for the I&T sector and other industries, as well as housing. The budget proposes raising the borrowing ceiling for 2 bond programs to $900 billion in a bid to support the city's key infrastructure. Each year for the next 5 years, bonds valued between $160 billion and $220 billion will be issued annually. Half will be designated for the refinancing of short-term debts from recent years. In addition, $10 billion will be injected into the Hoshui-Q Industry Park as initial capital. Another $10 billion will be used to fund the company of the Hong Kong Park under the He-Tao Shenzhen Hong Kong Science and Technology Innovation Cooperation Zone. This year's budget also sets sights on turbocharging the industrial use of artificial intelligence and promote widespread public adoption. Financial Secretary Paul Chan says the government is strengthening support in computing power, land supply and capital investment to fast-track AI development. He will establish and chair the Committee on AI Plus and Industry Development Strategy. Chan says the initial focus will be on life and health tech, as well as embodied intelligence, which integrates AI into robotics applications. To promote citywide adoption, the government will allocate $50 million to public organizations, tech firms, and tertiary institutions to organize AI courses and competitions. Hong Kong's 8 publicly funded universities will introduce 27 new undergraduate programs related to STEAM, including AI, creative industries, and data science over the next 3 academic years. The Employees Retraining Board will be renamed and upgraded as Upskill Hong Kong to provide AI application-related training. Meanwhile, the Hong Kong Artificial Intelligence Research and Development Institute, announced in last year's policy address with $1 billion in funding, will begin operation in the second half of the year. It will support AI research and commercialization and advise on governance and regulatory frameworks. An additional $100 million will be allocated to accelerate the digital intelligence transformation of government departments. Emerging industries are set to see more government support, including the low-altitude economy, aerospace, and autonomous driving. Measures include rolling out the traffic management system for unmanned aircraft, cross-boundary routes, and passenger-carrying flying aircraft in phases in the first half of the year. The Airport CityLink, Hong Kong's first commercially operated autonomous transport project, is expected to commence operations within the year. Paul Chan announced in the budget that over $1.6 billion will be provided to the Hong Kong Tourism Board in the coming year to attract major events and conferences. Authorities also decided to replace a Symphony of Lights with a new event. Memo Sengai reports.
A symphony of lights, the iconic light and sound show has lit up Victoria Harbour since 2004. In the budget, Paul Chan said that the extravaganza will be replaced by a new light show organized by the Hong Kong Tourism Board. Unlike the existing light show, the new one will not take place daily, but it will be displayed across the city at different times. Several tourists said it would be a pity to lose the long-running event.
I think if it's pretty famous and everyone love it, because it's one of those things that you want to see when you come to Hong Kong. So it would be a shame if they actually remove that.
Timothy Cho, Executive Director of the Hong Kong Tourism Association, meanwhile, supported the change, saying the new event will carry innovation which will help draw more tourists. He noted that Macau and some neighboring cities had launched similar light shows.
Cho said that the local tourism industry should strive to offer immersive experiences for visitors, adding that the budget policies has managed to support the sector in achieving the aspect.
The budget also mentions the development of urban-rural integration as an initiative of the government's Tourism is Everywhere agenda. By allocating $200 million to a new Northern Metropolis Urban-Rural Integration Fund, authorities hope to encourage NGOs to take part in promoting rural tourism. Momus 9, TVB News.
We will revisit the Hong Kong budget later on in the newscast. Overseas, in a record-long State of the Union address, U.S. President Donald Trump boasted he had ushered in the golden age of America. This despite sagging approval ratings and deepening voter frustration ahead of November's U.S. midterm election. Danny Rao has details.
US President Donald Trump declared during a marathon State of the Union address that we're winning so much, insisting he'd sparked an economic boom at home and imposed a new world order abroad in hopes it can counter his sliding approval rating. In all, Trump spoke for a record 108 minutes, breaking by 8 minutes the previous time mark from his address before a joint session of Congress last year. He said his administration had ushered in a golden era for his country.
Members of Congress and my fellow Americans, our nation is back. Bigger, better, richer, and stronger than ever before. Less than 5 months from now, our country will celebrate an epic milestone in American history, the 250th anniversary of our glorious American independence. This July 4th, we will mark 2.5 centuries of liberty and triumph, progress and freedom in the most incredible and exceptional nation ever to exist on the face of the earth. And you've seen nothing yet. We're going to do better and better and better. This is the golden age of America.
The US president largely avoided his usual bombast, only occasionally veering off script, mostly to slam Democrats. Trump championed his immigration crackdowns.
After 4 years in which millions and millions of illegal aliens poured across our borders, totally unvetted and unchecked, we now have the strongest and most secure border in American history by far.
Trump also vowed to plow ahead and use alternative laws to preserve his widespread tariffs the US Supreme Court just struck down. On the foreign policy front, Trump touted his desire for peace but threatened war. He said, as president, I'll make peace wherever I can, but I'll never hesitate to confront threats to America wherever we must. Trump's address got largely positive reviews from Republicans and was largely panned by Democrats.
Costs are too high in housing, healthcare, energy, and childcare. And I know these same conversations are being had all across this country. Because since this president took office last year, his reckless trade policies have forced American families to pay more than $1,700 each in tariff costs. Small businesses have suffered, farmers have suffered, some losing entire markets. Everyday Americans are paying the price.
Trump's address comes with the US president seeking to boost saggy approval ratings and deepening voter frustration ahead of his country's November midterm election. Daniel TV News.
And still ahead, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz visits China with business leaders in tow. United Nations call for peace on the 4th anniversary of the Ukraine war. And high-end Hong Kong flat stamp duty to increase according to the new budget. Welcome back. President Xi Jinping has urged strategic cooperation during talks with visiting German Chancellor Friedrich Merz in Beijing earlier today. Danny Zhou reports.
Merz's charter plane landed in Beijing in the late morning at the start of his 2-day state visit to meet with Chinese leaders and German business executives. Merz, on his inaugural visit to the country since taking office last May, is being accompanied by a large delegation of German industry chiefs, including those from Bayer, Siemens, BMW, Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagen. The Chancellor has pressed for a fair economic playing field for German companies and said his government was encouraging Chinese firms to invest in Europe's largest economy At the Diaoyutai State Guest House, President Xi Jinping told mayors that he attaches great significance to their bilateral ties, adding the two sides should strengthen strategic communication and mutual trust as the world becomes more turbulent and complex. Xi also expressed willingness to press for new development in their partnership. In a separate meeting with Premier Li Qiang, Mayors said Berlin is eyeing deeper economic exchanges but has specific concerns on cooperation and wants to ensure that cooperation is fair. He further noted the two countries must speak openly with each other. Since the establishment of diplomatic ties in 1972, Germany has long been China's largest trading partner and source of foreign investment in Europe. The Foreign Ministry said bilateral economic cooperation has deepened steadily over the past 50 years, and that Beijing stands ready to work with Berlin to promote high-quality trade and economic development through concrete actions. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky declared Russia has not broken Ukrainians nor triumphed in its war, 4 years after an invasion that has severely tested the resolve of Kyiv and its allies. Zelensky said he received reassurances from the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, that Ukraine would receive the first tranche of a €90 billion loan, despite Hungary's attempt to block it. Danny Rao tells us more.
More than a dozen senior European officials headed to Kyiv to mark the grim anniversary of Russia's war in Ukraine. The conflict has killed tens of thousands of people, upended life for millions of Ukrainians, and created instability far beyond its borders. In an address, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said his country has withstood the onslaught by Russia's bigger and better equipped army. He said Ukraine has defended its independence, and Russian President Vladimir Putin has not achieved his goals, has not broken Ukrainians, has not won this war. Addressing reporters after the ceremony in the Ukrainian capital, Zelensky said he was not aware of a new July 4th deadline to reach an agreement to end the war. However, he said there are positive signs about potential further prisoner exchanges with Russia.
The positive signals been about future exchange of war prisoners, of our soldiers. We want to have them back home, and I don't want to tell now publicly what number of soldiers they discussed, but I think that huge number.
Zelensky said he received reassurances from the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, that Ukraine would receive the first tranche of a €90 billion loan, despite Hungary's attempt to block it. Elsewhere, Russian President Putin made no mention of the conflict's anniversary, nor did he say how the war was going when he spoke at a meeting in Moscow of top officials of the Russian Federal Security Service, or FSB. However, he told them the threat of Ukrainian attacks on Russian soil has grown. Meanwhile, the UN General Assembly called for an immediate, full and unconditional ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, with 107 votes in favor, 12 against and 51 abstentions. The US was among the abstentions. Ukraine's Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mariana Betsa, told the Assembly Russia's war of aggression has shattered peace in Europe and around the globe. Anna M. of Stigneva, Russia's Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations, hit back at Kyiv. She said if Ukraine's true goal really is lasting peace, it should focus its efforts on diplomacy, on seeking mutually acceptable solutions, on working out durable security guarantees for both Russia and Ukraine. Tanral TV News.
Turning back to the budget, the first registration tax concessions for e-cars, including the one-for-one replacement scheme, will not be extended upon expiry on March 31st, 2026. In his budget speech, Paul Chan said the decision is related to the maturity of technology, ample supply, more choices of vehicle models, and reduced prices. Buyers must make a down payment before midnight tonight and make first registration before April 1st to enjoy the tax concession. Chan insists the government will continue to promote the use of electric vehicles, adding that the first registration tax for electric commercial vehicles, electric motorcycles, and electric motor tricycles will continue to be waived in full until end March 2028. In his budget speech, the financial secretary suggests an increase in the property transaction stamp duty rate to 6.5% for luxury residential properties valued at over $100 million. Meanwhile, with the high vacancy rates in commercial properties, the government will not sell any commercial plots in the coming fiscal year. This marks the second year of suspension of sales in this category. Samantha Lee has the details.
In last year's budget, the government reduced the stamp duty to just $100 on property transaction under $4 million. Today, Financial Secretary Paul Chan said the price of residential property rose by 3.3% year-on-year, following 3 years of decline. Rent rose by 4.3%. In line with the Affordable Users Pay principles, the government will raise the stamp duty on residential property transactions exceeding $100 million from the current rate of 4.25% to 6.5%. The adjustment is expected to account for 0.3% of the residential property transaction volume and is estimated to generate $1 billion of revenue. After LegCo approves the budget, the higher stamp duty will go into effect immediately. Founder of Central Line Property Agency Shi Wing-cheng believes the move will not significantly impact the luxury property market, as buyers are unlikely to focus on such minor amounts, since the possible rise in property prices would compensate for the tax increase. She thinks that the measure shows the government's confidence in the residential property market, which is stable enough to withstand challenges. The situation on commercial properties is a different story. The government will continue to suspend the sales of commercial land for the second consecutive year, considering the vacancy rate as well as the future supply and demand conditions.
In terms of public housing, including the Light Public Housing Initiative, the supply is set to reach 196,000 units in the coming 5 years, which is about 3% higher than that of the previous 5-year period.
As for private residential units, the government expects around 17,000 units will be completed annually over the next 5 years. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
And that's the news. Thank you for watching.